And welcome to Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres, episode 281. Today we're talking about the headshot. Yeah, head and shoulders. It's a particular subgenre of portraiture. So it's not exactly the same as, well, portraits are fairly general, and it does definitely come under the notion of portraiture, but it has its own specific, kind of takes, and that's what we're really going to be talking about today. So if you happen to be watching live, leave a comment down below, let me know you're here, and we can make a start. Yes, and welcome to Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres, episode 281. So if you happen to be watching live, like I say, leave a comment, let me know you're here. Click the like button as well. That's always quite a nice thing to do. Is if you click the like button, in fact, it tends to let the algorithms know that something is going out live on YouTube, and sometimes we pick up an extra couple of viewers. So always worth doing that. And if you haven't done so already, then click subscribe. So today, yes, we are talking about the notion of headshots. It's a very specific subgenre of portraiture. And and it kind of has its own set of rules, or at least set of understandings that you need to have if you want to be successful in creating headshots. So that's really what we're going to be talking about. We're live here on YouTube. If you happen to be watching live, then leave a comment. If you're not watching live, if you're watching on catch up, you can still leave a comment in the general comments down below as well. It's just I won't be able to respond to them in real time. But I see we've got a few people in already. April says, greetings from a foggy 50-degree day in Long Island, New York. Oh, fog's always fun. Yes, you get out with it. I mean, we've done podcasts on fog before now. It's just one of those kind of rare things. You can never be totally sure it's going to be there or not. But when you can get it, and if you can get fog and say you can get still water as well, you can always get quite amazing effects. John Harvey says, here in the Midwest, spring is making an entrance. Great, warmer temperatures and a lot of rain. Okay. Ganilla says, hi from Orland, sunny day here in the north. Lisa says, hello from a sunny, warm day in Maryland. April says, thank goodness, she's talking to John. We're going to hit the 60s this week. Yay. That's Fahrenheit, of course, rather than it'd be a bit bad if it was 60 centigrade Celsius. Sandra joins us from a mild and overcast Birmingham. Susan says, hi from a grey and misty Kirkcudbright with occasional glimpses of sun. Only 5 degrees C today. You know, I think it's slightly different. There's not been the mist up here in Castle Douglas. We are only 9 miles up the road here from Susan. But Susan's down on the coast. We're up the hill a little bit. So we haven't had that sea mist. Interesting. Marie joins us and says, hi, how are you doing? Marcy's joined us and said, good morning, y'all, from a balmy +3 degrees C here in Winnipeg. Janet says, hi from a warm Mississauga, up to 10 degrees today. Yesterday was a hot 16. Wow. For VG, the first warm days feel a lot warmer, hotter than they really are. And VG, of course, now joins us, says, good evening from Chennai in India, where it's 28 degrees here, and we just started using the air conditioning again. Marcy says, managed to join here on time. Marie is actually says London weather is okay, no sunshine. Nicola says, hi Kim, no need to tell you what the weather's like, it's probably same as you, because Nicola's just 4 miles down the road from here. A Day Ghost says, hello from a warm and sunny Sweden. And suddenly a Day Ghost, is that Dan? Remind me again, was it, suddenly I'm thinking, is it Sam or is it Dan? But warm and sunny Sweden, sort of. Okay, well, this is great. We have people in. We have a topic to talk about. And yes, I'm really impressed to everybody who's managed to make it on time, especially those on the other side of the Atlantic where the clocks have changed, and they haven't here in the UK. We change in 3 weekends time. The last weekend in March is when our clocks go forward an hour. Now, I think the most of Europe, so in Orland and in Sweden, I think there's similar kind of 1 hour forward with the clocks in 3 weeks' time. But of course, over in America, it happened last night as well. So, and in Canada. So a little bit of kind of out of sync for a few weeks. But of course, in Chennai, there is no time change at all. So it just means that VG is going to be an hour different right across the summer until we get to last weekend in October, I think it is. Anton is not Sam or Dan. Apologies, Anton. Yes. Welcome. Thank you for reminding me of that. Yes, yeah, you all have your own little handles. You know, some of, oh, fine, Susan's called Susan and John's called John. But not everybody is using their own name, and trying to remember who all is what isn't always easy. But yes, thank you, Anton, for reminding me. Okay, so what are we talking about today then? We are talking about headshots. Now, headshots are a form of portraiture. So portraiture, faces, people, okay? But generally speaking, portraiture, whilst it is its own genre, as opposed to, say, wildlife photography or wedding photography or street photography, portraiture is about people, okay? And it's generally about faces, and it's about telling a story about the person, conveying something of the personality or the mood or the story or something about that person. It's not just about a visual likeness. So, if you think about a passport photo is there to purely be a visual likeness. This is so that if you are moving from one country to another at passport control, they can take a look at your picture and then they can go, do you match up to the person that looks like in the picture? Are you the person, or are you pretending to be your grandmother or your sister or your uncle or whatever, okay? Or have you just stolen this passport and are trying to get into the country under false pretenses? So the picture has to match up to the face, but it's an identifier. It's not telling anything about the personality. When you have your passport photo taken, you're not allowed to smile. You have to make sure your eyes are clear. You're not allowed to cover your face with, So it's about, the relationship between how far apart are your eyes in relation to where your nose is, in relation to where your ears are, how much of a gap there is between your lip and your nose. All these kind of personal identifiers. But you don't tend to think of it as a portrait. A portrait is something which is telling us something more about the person. Marcy is saying Marcy is my real name, by the way. Yeah. I think we kind of established once before. It's just because you're Marcy 5101. I think the very first time I wasn't sure how to pronounce it, but that's great. Then so that's portraits, and we've talked a lot about portraits. We've had portrait competitions or challenges. We've had self-portrait challenges. But now what happened is this is about headshots. So today is all about the notion of headshots. And this came about because John in Ohio won the accumulated smug points for January and February by gaining an incredible 150 smug points. And when I asked him what would he like to cover, came up with a couple of different suggestions. And headshots was really like the key thing here. So what is it about a headshot then specifically? So headshots are, on a physical level, they are kind of what they say. They're a shot of the head, a bit like a passport photo and a bit like as you're seeing me on the screen now. Generally speaking, you tend to be talking about the head and maybe a bit of the shoulders. Now it can extend further. Headshots can essentially move down the body to perhaps the waist. If you're going 3/4 length, you're moving away from the idea of headshot. You can still be in portraiture, but headshot, I think, by and large, don't think about going much below the waist. Occasionally you get shots of sort of people standing there, arms folded, trying to get a little bit more of a background, extending out the headshot itself. But what is the idea of a headshot? A headshot is partly it's an identifier. This is what I look like. But it's also kind of like a resume or a CV. It's a first impression as well. So the headshot is generally speaking, can go in a variety of places. So, what did I do over here? I kind of scribbled up a couple of different places where they go. So your headshot is this idea of you're trying to give an impression about something. Sometimes, like I say, a first impression. So sometimes the first we see of anybody. So somebody emails us, or somebody recommends that we go and speak to somebody else, or we're inviting somebody to go and give a talk to our group, or something like that. And we're telling other people, go and look this person up. And so we type their name into the internet, or maybe we go and look them up on Facebook or other social media, or maybe LinkedIn. And we're looking to see what this person looks like. Okay. So, here's young woman, here's old man, here's middle-aged trans, doesn't really matter. The point is that it allows us to go, okay, this is what they look like. But more than this is what they look like, perhaps it's conveying something of a personality. Perhaps, does this person look warm? Does this person look confident? Does this person look friendly? Does this person look a bit standoffish? Does this person look a bit wild and wacky? Does this person look very intellectual? Does this person look kind of a bit sexy? Are they trying it on? Does this person look knowledgeable? Does this person look brave? Does this person look adventurous? There's all sorts of different ways that we might decide. We might kind of look at the picture and then we impose our idea, an idea of what this person might be like, by the very limited amount of space we've got. Yes, we can go, so you can look at this headshot here and you can go, okay, probably a bloke, got a goatee, going a bit bald and thin at the top. Eyebrows are a bit thick, probably judge the age of, depending on how you judge ages. I'm 59 at the moment. You might go, oh, looks a bit young for that, or looks a bit old for that. But you've kind of got, I'm not a guy in my 20s, but I'm also not a guy in my 80s either. I'm a guy. I'm not a gal. So there, but then there's a next level whereby you're going, well, okay, so he's got a goatee. Does that tell me something other than somebody who's completely clean shaven? And then today, a little bit of scruff here. I've not actually shaved for a week down the sides here. So, does that say I'm not somebody who is meticulous about my, personal appearance? I'm not one of these who's absolutely sort of shaved to a point of almost shininess on the skin. And then you're seeing a bit of clothing. So I've got a top button undone. I've got like a, cottony denim-y type shirt. I've got a little bit of a waistcoat. That's telling you something else as well. I'm not wearing a clean, crisp white cotton shirt. I'm not wearing a suit and tie. And I'm also not wearing a flowery shirt or something that you would expect, if I was wearing, like some kind of sunny Florida shirt or something like that. So all these little things become clues. So even if you just see a purely static image of who I am, before I've opened my mouth, before you've heard my voice, before you've seen me gesture or, use different expressions, you start to form an opinion. And April says, you like black. Yeah, absolutely. I like black. It tends to be my default colour. For as far back as I can remember, somewhere probably in my teens, I probably started thinking black looked a bit cool. And somehow that stuck. So I've always tended to have black shirts. I've got a few blue shirts. I might have one or two dark green ones. But by and large, black tends to be my default. Marcy says waistcoat equals class. Well, there you go. Now, some people waistcoat equals class, and some people it may be a bit up yourself, or maybe, the thing is that different people have different associations with different things. What happens is you create an identity which you are putting out there, and a headshot is all about this identity. But the key thing here is about that the headshot is there to express an identity to a viewer, okay? And whereas like a portrait, sometimes a portrait is about the interpretation of the person with the camera, to the photographer, of the person in front of them. So I might see somebody, I might decide I want to bring out a particular aspect of them. I like their quirkiness, their scruffiness, their smartness, something about the way they dress, something about the way they hold themselves, something about the way they even kind of inhabit their skin as such. And that's what I'm trying to capture. But a headshot, if I'm commissioned to do a headshot, it's got a very specific notion that there is a place where this is going to be put, and that the people looking at it need to be given a particular impression when they look at it. So I did a headshot just last week, or earlier this week. I was doing a headshot with a client, and they are starting up a life coach business. And she needs to come across as professional, but at the same time warm and approachable. And that kind of professional yet approachable is almost the holy grail of headshots. It's very difficult to try and to actually achieve. But that's what we're going for, as opposed to other headshots which I've done, which haven't been worried about warm and approachable. They've tried to be confident and authoritative. If you're the CEO going on the front of the annual, your picture's going on the front of the annual accounts reports for the shareholders, it's not about looking friendly, it's about looking in control. And that's a different kind of thing. If you're a writer and your picture is going on the back of a dust jacket or something like that, you need to look writerly. You need to look thoughtful, maybe a bit intellectual, maybe a bit mysterious even. Okay, so every single place where that headshot is going to be put has a specific audience. Even if you're on a dating site, Tinder, Grindr, whatever it is, any of these kind of apps, then at that point, people are, swipe left, swipe right. You are being judged in a fraction of a second. Having said that, the judgment is happening in a fraction of a second anyway, even if it's on your LinkedIn profile. So therefore, the headshot can actually really be quite a critical, crucial thing. And if you think of it a bit like a CV or resume, if you were applying for a job, somebody's going to judge you on it. And so what we're trying to do with the headshot is try and make sure that the judgment that somebody gives is the judgment we want. We want them to think, oh, he looks confident. We want them to think, oh, she looks interesting, or she looks warm and approachable, or, he looks a bit mysterious. Whatever it is, we have to decide before we take the shot, what impression is it we need to give? Once we understand what impression it is we need to give, then everything else follows that. And if this sounds familiar, it should do, because pretty much week in, week out, I bang on about the narrative for photos. This is everything about photography distilled. The point of a photo is you identify at the point, if you can, when you're taking photos, if you can go, what is the primary thing I'm trying to communicate? Even if it's, a fallen leaf lying in a patch of mud. What is it about it? Is it the colour? Is it the shape? Is it the contrast between the leaf and the mud? Am I trying to get a sense of dying, or am I putting it against a little bit of spring grass coming up with a sense of hope? When you identify the narrative, everything else, your camera settings, your lighting, your depth of focus, your editing is going to support that narrative. And this is exactly the same with headshots, but we just have to be much, much more clear about it. So you sit down with your client, you sit down with the person that you're doing the headshots with, and where is this picture going to appear? Who's going to be looking at it? What impression does that person who's looking at it need to take away from the shot that's in front of them? Okay, so important. That is absolutely your starting point. And if you don't get that bit right, everything else is going to fail. Okay, doesn't matter how good you get your lighting, doesn't matter how good you get your background, doesn't matter how much they got their makeup or been to the hairdresser or shaved properly or got the perfect collar and tie. None of it's going to work if you haven't understood exactly what impression you need the person to be giving in that headshot. What else have we got? Oh, John says black is a traditional colour for photographers wear. Well, actually, there is a little point in that, which is it is kind of useful if you're a photographer, that if you are getting picked up in any reflective surfaces, if I'm photographing someone, then actually black makes you less obvious. If you're walking around with bright, colourful oranges and reds and yellows, then if you're taking a photo in a place and there's a reflective surface, whether it's a teapot or a toaster or a mirror or just a shiny bit of something or other, then your colour is going to catch into that. So yes, wearing black is a little bit of a kind of a camouflage at the same time, it does have to be said. Meg's joined us as well. April says, I'm all about colour, wear lots of bright colours, love tie-dye. Excellent. Okay, lots of people saying hi to Meg. Okay, so tell you what we'll do, let's start throwing up some images, talk about examples, and talk about the different ways, in things you need to think about when doing coming at it from headshots. What do we got? April's saying to Marcy, right, April's got to disappear because yes, I seem to remember this before. When the clocks shift, it means that April kind of gets caught behind. Glad you could have joined us anyway. Turn back, make sure you tune back in afterwards. Right, okay. I think what I will do first of all is just show you what a headshot can look like, and rather than kind of embarrass anybody else, let's start with me. Okay, so here's a headshot I took 2022, so 3 years ago. In fact, actually, I just got my new R5 camera and I thought I would try it out. And with this, I've just put up a wee black backdrop. I've got, I think this is window light. I've just quickly shoved it up in my study, put the camera on a tripod and taken a couple of shots of myself. And I've gone black and white. And so this here then is what you might call a kind of a typical headshot. It's an understanding. So, and what am I trying to do here with this headshot? Okay. It's it's not big broad grin, but it's not serious intensity either. It's attempting to be a kind of, ideally a little bit of a twinkle in the eye, a little bit of a slight warmth. Problem is, it's very difficult with yourself to know whether what you're wanting to get across is really coming across. There's times when I think I'm smiling quite a lot, and actually but the photo doesn't seem to reflect that. When I'm moving, like, you're seeing my face and I'm gesticulating and my face is changing all the time, you get much more of a sense of my personality. When the image is frozen, how do you get that sense of personality across? So, and putting it into black and white also gives it maybe, you're just sort of a slightly more arty kind of effect. You're sort of saying, rather than it just being a sort of straight colour, like passport type thing, go black and white. You're kind of hinting at the idea that maybe you're being a little bit creative. That's one way of doing a headshot. Now, headshot that I used for several years until recently, when I realised actually this is just getting out of date, was this one. And this idea with the headshot is to try and create much more of a narrative. This isn't just about how I look and whether I've got a smile on my face. The fact is I've got backlights going. I've got smoke all around me. I've even got a camera in my hand with my finger sort of sitting on the trigger button. So I'd been doing a shoot with a band actually on stage, and we'd set up lights and we were using smoke machine, everything else. And I thought, oh, actually, let's get a decent selfie while I'm at it. And so for a long time, for several years, I've been using this as my key headshot. So for my professional, for my LinkedIn profile, for my Ayres photography Instagram page, for my Ayres photography Facebook page, this was my primary shot, because it sort of encompassed everything. It says, here's somebody who's got a camera, he's a photographer, but he's not just your run-of-the-mill bloke with a camera. Look at this, it's quite a kind of fancy theatrical staged cinematic-y type setup. So I'm trying to give over much more of an impression by all the theatrics that are going along with it. Now, for some people, that theatrics is just way over the top. What on earth do you think you're doing? I just want to see what you look like. Thank you very much. Okay. But then again, those kind of people who think that probably aren't my clients. So there's something else to keep in mind, who it is that's going to be looking at your picture. The basic problem that I got to, and I realised for the last couple of years, is that this is out of date. This was taken in 2019, which is now 7 years ago. And in that 7 years, we can now see the beard was a bit darker then. The hair was a little bit thicker then. The eyebrows weren't quite as wild. Not to mention how deep the actual, wrinkles have become as well. So quite simply, I don't look as young as this anymore. And in fact, in the intervening 7 years, we've had the whole COVID pandemic, lockdown, and God knows how much stress about the way the world is turning. I'm not going to veer into political talk here. The point is that the stress levels mean that I've gone from this, which to me looks a good 10 years younger than I am now, rather than only the 7 years. See, me now, me 7 years ago. As you can see, I looked, so I got to a point where I was starting to think, well, so I had to update it. Now, if we go back even further, if we go back, was it 14 years, something like that? 16 years, in fact. This was one of my first professional headshots that I used to promote myself. So 2010, so we're talking 16 years ago here. So I was a snip of a lad. I would have been only, 43 there. Just look how dark that beard is. Not even a hint of grey in it. Look how thick and luscious that hair is. What a young lad. At the time, of course, I thought I looked much older. And this setup then is, so I've got the camera, and this whole idea of actually the headshot is sitting in the back of the lens, and then the me that it's taking a shot of is out of focus. So I've had to set up a second camera behind a camera, do remote release time. Anyway, lots of complexity to create this as a self-portrait. But this, again, like the idea of the smoky photo, was done to sort of give over an impression that I'm not just a bloke with a camera, but I'm a creative bloke with a camera. And this one I kept going for several years until actually it became very clear that actually I wasn't looking that young again. A couple of comments. What have we got here? Marie says she loves the black and white. John says the smoky shot tells a lot about you. Marcy says, no, he's a magician too. Yeah. VG says this truly great shot, cinematic and definitely not a boring headshot. Sandra says, I like the back of the photo shot. You look totally different. Yeah, so, and VG says, wow, truly a fab creative one, especially where the background is in bokeh. Yeah, I mean, I was very pleased with it at the time. I've tried replicating it since, and I almost can't remember quite how I did. I mean, I can kind of do it, but it's not an easy thing to do when you've got I think I was even lining up mirrors and bits and pieces. Probably find it easier now because actually my newer camera, I can operate via my phone if I want. So, you can sort things out. Anyway. Point being is that here what we've got is a kind of headshot within a headshot, frame within a frame, to go back to the topic we were talking about last year. With all these things, though, I needed one. Last year, I decided, no, I've got to have another proper, more up-to-date headshot, and this is the one that I'm now currently using. So if you go to my website, this is one that I use. I think I now use this one on Facebook and possibly other forms of social media. And this is a much more traditional headshot as such. Here I'm not mucking around. I'm not worrying about having cameras. I'm not worrying about having smoke and theatrics and stuff like that. What I'm trying to put across here is hopefully come and have a chat. Come and have a chat. Let's just talk. If you found my website, you already know that I'm a photographer. If you found my social media pages, you already know that I'm a photographer. And I think actually this whole idea of me having to hold the camera and all the rest of it was sort of hinting at a bit of an insecurity, as though I've got to tell you, this is what I do. Honest, this is what I look. I'm a photographer. I'm a photographer. This photo is much more, I don't have to prove that anymore. You know I'm a photographer because you're on a photographer's website or you're on a photographer's social media site. That bit's already been said. Part of my marketing process isn't, you don't come to my website, choose what day you want, save the calendar, choose whether you want the gold, silver, bronze package, do everything remote and then just click enter, put in your credit card details, then I turn up on the day and take a shot. Everything about the way I do photography, the way I market that I do photography is personal, customized, bespoke. What that means is if you're thinking about having a photo shoot with me, we go out for a coffee, we sit down, we chat, we explore ideas, we tailor what we're doing. And in order to be able to do that, you have to trust me, or you have to have a sense that I'm worth having a conversation with. So everything about this shot is designed for the idea of hopefully warm, friendly, approachable. Would you just like to would you feel okay having a coffee with this person to explore your idea? Hopefully I don't look intimidating. Hopefully I don't look too up myself. Again, it's very, very difficult with myself because I know what I'm thinking on the other side of the eyes. It's very, very difficult to be objective about yourself. But what I've tried to go here for is maximum warmth and approachability. Okay. And then because it's, narrow depth of focus, but I mean, the eyes are in focus nicely, but by the time we get back to the ears, it's gone out of focus. So you can see I'm using a very narrow depth of field. Probably, even the tip of my nose is out of focus. I'm probably on a 2.8 or a 3.2 here. So that's also a kind of a photographic technique. It's not the selfie with the phone, which doesn't do that. Yeah, and of course, yes, I am wearing black. Sorry, extra comments here. Oh, VG says this one is charming. That smile. Oh, so thank you, VG. Anton says, I love smiles. Lisa says, you look very personable. Susan says, your new one is absolutely you. VG says, Kim always loves the stern or deadpan faces. This is what I like. This one is what I like the best. Marcy says, very friendly. Marie also says, you look very friendly. Sandra says, very accurate representation. I think your personality comes across. And Marie also says, approachable. Excellent. Phew. Right. So it's hopefully this is kind of doing what I need it to do then. And, as long as you're all actually being honest with me and not just, being kind to me. So hopefully then what you're starting to understand then is that the headshot has a purpose, and you've got to understand what that purpose is. Am I trying to come across as clever? Am I trying to come across as confident? Am I trying to come across as approachable? Am I trying to come across as interesting, mysterious? There's all these different ways that we can try and come across. Or if you are doing headshots for somebody else, what you need to take into consideration for them to come across. Now, it would be remiss of me if I didn't it's not just the head. Once you've decided what you're going to do, once you've decided, the kind of mood you need to get across, the next thing you really got to sort out is your lighting. And I'll show you next just an idea of just showing you, well, actually, tell you what, just before I get to the lighting, let me show you another shot, which actually turned out to be a headshot that went places. So this one here is of a blues musician guitarist called Sean Taylor. And I took a photo of him, long backstory for this, which I'm not going to go into. But basically, he was playing a gig. I took a photo for the venue as part of that Hall of Fame is the kind of short version of this. I got Sean, he turned up, he had a long day, he was tired, he was okay with me, we were perfectly fine, but I wanted a level of intensity to him. I've just got a single softbox light coming down here. You can see the reflection just catching the lights in the highlights in the eyes, but he gave me this real kind of intensity into the lens. And in fact, what happened was when I sent him the photo afterwards, about a month later, I got back an email saying, look, I'm bringing out a new album. Can I use this for the cover? And so actually, and as I said, yeah, great. So this photo actually ended up on the cover of his album. And if you think about the headshot on the front of a CD cover or an album cover, that is absolutely, is that same form. It's a calling card. It's trying to say something about who this person is. What does Anton say? Question about the Sean Taylor shot. What was the purpose of cropping it that way as opposed to closer in from the left? Is there a rule of thirds thing going on? Yes, basically, yes. I mean, the thing is that this wasn't cropped to be an album cover. This was, there's a kind of rule of thirds going on. There's a slightly more cinematic thing. Portraits are very often done, well, in portrait format. I quite like the idea of doing them in landscape format. I think that it changes there's a slight change of intimacy level. And also it allows you to, if you want to use this in a poster or a flyer or something, it allows you to extend out to the left quite easily and then have writing, put in, coming to this venue soon or anything else that you want to have. What he did though, or what was done with this was it was then cropped square to be made into the album cover. John says, I noticed many headshots are slightly tilted. Yes, tilting is one of those things. I will come back to that though, but remind me if I don't. Lisa says, I really love character shots. Yeah, so that's one of the things. Now, to go back to this notion of lighting then that I was talking about. So here's a series of photos I did actually during a spring fling a couple of years back, where I was doing a lighting demonstration. And so what we've got here is we've got our lad, and I've got a flash on a stand, off-camera flash on a stand. Here I've got the flash, just the stand, just right next to the camera. Okay, so I'm here, the light is just over my right-hand shoulder, and whoomph, it goes off, and you can see the shadow is slightly to the left. And he's nicely lit up, and you can have a 100 ISO, and, you know, we can zoom in, and it's all nice and sharp, plenty of detail. But the thing is here is it's boring. It's boring light. It's the least interesting light is straight on, generally speaking. So then what I did was I moved it round a bit. I moved the light about 45 degrees to my right. Okay. And at this point now, we've got a shadow. Now, this one's slightly out of focus. Doesn't really matter. At this point here, what you're noticing, though, is that there's the left-hand side of the face is now in shadow. There's a nose shadow quite strongly there as well. The point being, look at it. The only thing I've done is move the light 45 degrees, and yet it has quite a different feel. Whichever one you prefer is unimportant here. The main thing to understand is that the mood of it has changed. Then I moved it 90 degrees. Okay. Now, off to the left is, I think there's a window or there's a reflector. I can't remember whether there's a reflector or a window. But there is another kind of very light, pale, bounced source. I think there's a reflector I've got on the left. So we've got the light coming in on the right, but and then we've got the darker shadow. But you can see it lightens up again a bit on the left as we're looking at it here. So we've almost got like 3 layers of light going on. So to go back, all I've done is there might be a reflector sitting over on one side, but all I've done is move the light, and you can see just how dramatically that changes the mood, the feel of what it is we're trying to express. So a simple head shot. He hasn't moved, his expression hasn't changed, the only thing that's changed is the light. And so this is why you really need to start understanding and playing with the light when you're creating whatever headshot you are. Now with this one, we've got the same as last time, only now I've put a second light. I've got, you see, off-camera flash just sitting behind him. And now what that's done is that's catching the edge of the hair. And that hair is separating him out from the background a bit more than that. If I then move that, with this one, I've moved it out of shot, and I've put a little yellow gel, a little orange gel, I think it was, just on it. So now almost like there's a little bit of sunshine kind of coming through a little crack in the window here. And it's lighting up the side of his head, but it's also catching this jawline here. Do you see this? It's kind of making it's creating that line around his jaw, which is really kind of... So now look at the definition of his face by having these, a key light coming from one side, a bit of bounce light, and an extra little light kind of coming down and catching that jawline is really sculpting the face. Now you compare this photo to this photo, and it's night and day. Okay, or the difference is vast in terms of if you're trying to put across an impression of who this lad is. This is giving a much more favourable impression. Now in this one, I've then swung the box, the light box, back a bit, so that now instead of having the light hitting the wall behind, it's now kind of, I think, the wall's now in shadow. So it's now even just that, noticing the difference in shade of the back. And then with this one, I've got the smoke machine going, and there's little bits of sort of slight swirls of smoke, adding a little bit of texture to it as well. So that's the kind of key thing I wanted to get across here, is that even when he hasn't moved at all, his expression stays the same, face is forward, he hasn't moved. By moving the angle of the light around, by having a little bit of backlight, by shifting whether the background is lit up or the background is dropped into shadow, even by a little bit of smoke, adding a little touch of texture to it, it changes the mood, the feel dramatically. Now, if you were to then add in a tilt of the head or a change of expression, you can start to see just how dramatically different any headshot can be. Headshots are not passport photos. Okay, so what have we got? Lisa says, I love the character. Yeah. Marcy says, I agree on the wide headshots. Anton says, yeah, I really like it. That's why I was curious. And Anton also says, I like seeing the progress here, shot by shot. Shot by shot. That was super informative. Excellent. Okay, what I'm going to do now then is I'm going to take you through some other kind of sort of slight progression things as well. So if we go back here, so here's a shot I did of a girl called Katie, a woman called Katie, who was a hairdresser, but she was also modelling for a shoot I was doing for a hairdressing salon. Now here we've got a headshot, but what this is because it's profile, she's not engaged with the camera. Okay, and that's a kind of a key thing here, because generally speaking, when we're talking about a headshot, what we really want is the engagement with the camera. We want the eyes to be looking into the camera, because at this point, we're not engaged with her. Fine, it's a shot of her. It shows a very nice profile, and that's fine. Shows that she's got nice hair. That's fine. For the hairdresser, it's a lovely shot because it's showing the detail that's gone into just creating, the little wisps and curls and that kind of casual but very styled feel to it. But she's not engaged with the shot. She's not engaged with the viewer. And a headshot is about, if we consider the idea that we're trying to make a connection with the unknown viewer, then you need to be looking at the camera. Here she's got a shot where she's looking straight on. We're playing around with this. This is one of dozens of different shots I took. But here she's looking straight on. The hand coming up is creating a sort of sense of something else going on. Here, tilted head. To go back to John then, what does a tilted head do? A tilted head, there's two things primarily, I would say, with a tilted head. The first is you are introducing a sense of diagonal. And if we go back to one of my oft repeated things, is a diagonal, a strong diagonal in an image adds a level of energy and movement. Okay, verticals and horizontals create stability to an image. Diagonals add energy and movement to an image. And when you've got a static image, which all photos are static, if you're wanting to create an illusion of a bit more energy, a bit more movement, then you insert a diagonal. Okay, so a slight tilt of the head is, we've now got this lovely diagonal running across the eyes. Okay, the second bit is that if somebody is listening to you in conversation, they're very often, they're tilting their head. It's a sign of, okay, tell me again. Maybe also leaning forward a little bit. Okay, so if I'm straight onto you like this, I'm talking to you, I'm dominating the space. If I'm turned slightly and I'm leaning in slightly and my ears coming towards you a little bit and I'm sort of slightly tilted head, now it looks like I'm listening. If you're talking and I'm in this position, it feels like you are being listened to. Okay, as opposed to if you're talking to me and I'm like this, it feels like, well, you might be talking, but it could just be bouncing off me. I might just be getting ready to think about what I'm saying next. So all these little kind of subtle body postures and what have you are creating an indication. So if you're trying to create something of actually slightly more personable thing, then a slight tilt of the head and maybe a slight pushing the ear towards the camera, leaning in a little bit. What that's saying in your headshot is, I'm a little bit more approachable. And just to go, to go back to, say, this one here, I have slight tilt of the head. I'm not looking straight on. Whereas actually, where are we? This one, I'm looking straight on. Okay. This one is, now my body's turned slightly, but this is all about dominance in a way. This is, I'm here, I'm the photographer, look at all these fancy effects and theatricals, I know what I'm doing. So if you're wanting to grab somebody, if you're wanting to work with somebody who's got all the knowledge and authority of what he's doing, then boom, I am here, I own this space, boom. Whereas this is foregone. This has gone, I'm leaning slightly in. I've got a very slight tilt of the head along with a smile. And that slight tilt of the head says, I'm engaging with you. Okay. I'm perhaps smiling at something you just said. I want to hear what you have to say. Okay. Right. Somebody's saying can't see the images. Sorry. Okay. Yep. Sorry about that, Susan. Thank you. Okay. To go back to here, this is what I was saying about that notion of, looking forward, dominating the space. Whereas slight tilt of the head, I'm listening to you. I'm taking on board what you're saying. I'm engaging with you. Okay. So if we go back to this, so slight tilt of the head. Now, this is slightly less of an engagement, but if we do another version of this, now we've gone black and white. Now we've moved in closer. And this feels like a very quite an intimate photo. We're really close up. Everything's about the eyes. That turn of the, that tilt of the head. And the black and white is making it more artistic too. So you can see how these things are kind of changing. Let's talk about, let's move on to another one here. So it's a little set of photos I did for a guy called Alex. Now, Alex McQuiston, he's a musician, he's a cello player, but he's also runs Absolute Classics for the last decade or two. There's a Absolute Classics basically puts on classical music concerts in the region, and he gets hold of classical musicians, world famous classical musicians from all over the world and country, to come to this area, this little corner of Scotland, and he puts on festivals and all sorts of things. Now, one of the things about Alex is, at the point that I'm taking these photos, I think he was about 30 odd years old, except for the fact that he'd always kind of had this quite youngish face. And, he kind of got famous in the region when he was about 15 as being this sort of slight prodigy cello player. And people still had stuck in their head the idea that he was 15. So we needed to kind of create some photos which made him look a little bit more his age, a little bit more, mature and confident. Now, this photo, natural light taken by a window, but he's wearing his suit and tie. He's looking relaxed, head tilted. This is a shot of confidence. Now, we also then went and did some studio headshots. So here we're going black and white. We're looking for a confidence. So here he's very upright, tilted, turned slightly, and looking straight into the lens. This is me owning the space. This one, he's now leaning in. You see what an incredible difference there is between this shot and this shot. I mean, it also changes the shape of his face somewhat as well. But that difference between I'm here and this is all about confidence and ownership and almost a kind of don't mess with me kind of thing. There's a, I know exactly what I'm doing. And if you're wanting somebody who's going to be in charge of organising a festival or, an event, and knows what he's doing and isn't taking any prisoners, this is the guy you want. This guy, though, he's maybe listening to you as well. He's a little bit more engaged with you. There's still a confidence, there's still a strong confidence about him and a fixing you with the steely gaze. But, there's a subtle difference in it. And then this one is where you play around with lenses. I've got a wide angle lens on, and this changes it altogether. Now the face becomes distorted, super wide angle lens, close up. But this one then becomes awfully playful. So if you was to use this one, it would just be saying, you know what, I can have fun too. Okay, so that kind of thing, the angle at which you're placing the camera and the angle at which the person is towards the camera is making a huge difference. Where do we get? A few things here. Marie says, learn a lot to do with the lights. Lighting is a crucial aspect of what comes across. Sandra says, are headshots for one person only? Yes, basically. I mean, you can, well, the only time you are likely to do a double headshot is if it is something like a very, it is part of the act. So maybe if you're doing performance, there's a double act performance, Lauren and Hardy, Abbott and Costello, the Crankies. Only half of you will get that reference. Then at that point, perhaps you might have a double headshot. But for the most part, headshots do tend to be very singular. There's got to be a really good reason why not. Don't just kind of slapdash fall into the idea of shooting a couple of people together. That's less of portrait, that's less to do with portraiture in terms of the headshot. Where are we? So yeah, Marcy says, yes, Sandra, they're usually for professional services. Where are we? Susan recognised Alex, says the wonderful Alex. Anton says he reminds me of a young Swedish actor from the 50s, Lars Ekborg. Well, we can go and look him up afterwards. Marie says, Kim, you've given me the confidence to explore. Excellent. Good luck. Sandra says, the Proclaimers. Yes, yeah, well, that's true. I suppose get the Proclaimers, who are identical twins musicians. Yeah, you kind of need both of them in the shot at the same time. Or if you have one of them, you don't know which one it is. Right. Okay. So sometimes, though, headshots are you get actors, you get performers, you get models, you get people who are needing to show a range, and at which point sometimes you might need a range of headshots. So if we take, for example, to go back to the same time I did the shot of Katie, this was another model here we set up this. So this is Scott, and this was set up for the same hairdressing salon. So part of it was to do with the hair, part of it was to do with the look, but there was also we're creating a whole set of photos. And I'm just going to run you through half a dozen quick shots. So this is more your kind of standard headshot where, slight tilt of the head, engagement, but there's not an attempt at friendliness here. This is a kind of, almost like a who do you think you are kind of look. Then there's this one where head's very tilted, looking round. There's a curiosity. There's I'm not sure what, who are you? What do you think's going on? Then you've got this sense of really leaning into the camera, but again, no attempt at warmth. This isn't, I'm looking at you because I'm listening carefully to what you're saying because I'm going to come back and say something warm and friendly. This is almost a kind of, again, this is kind of in your face. This one, by comparison, we're looking at we're now looking, you can imagine this as almost like the poster for coming soon to a theatre near you for his one-man stand-up show. This one, potentially even more so, likewise this. So you start to see how different photos are creating different moods, different images. And here where he's just really going and having a bit of fun. And so each of these photos then, this is what you would call you would create a series of photos. And the series of photos are they're all taken from the same, under the same conditions, but they're showing different bits of personality. Maybe if he was doing a one-man show, these would be different bits within that show. And then depending on which bit you're promoting, where it's going, who it's being placed in front of, would depend on which picture you chose to be going out there as part of the promotional stuff. Another one is actors' headshots, specifically actors. So there's a guy, Coach, Fox and Hound Theatre, who I've done little bits of work with before now. And we did some headshots for Coach. And Coach is a great guy. Now, this one, he's deliberately going for, the hard man. You're looking at somebody who's intense. He's unshaven. He's glaring straight into the camera. There's this bullish kind of quality to him. It's a kind of, no, you don't want to mess with this guy. This is the hard man. This is the gangster. This is the person who's going to break your legs if you don't do what he says. Here's another version of that same kind of shot, where, the same kind of impression, but now we're getting the shoulders. Now we're getting the full body language, and it's the intense expression. He's the guy who's not happy. This, by comparison, though, completely different. Now we've got Well, it could be your friendly plumber or electrician who's come round to, and he's just sitting down having a chat in between, while he has a cup of tea. But this is the point. This guy's an actor. And he's needing to have different looks depending on the job that he's going to be applying for. Then what he did was go for the suit and tie. Now it's a different kind of shot. And here we've got a shot here. Now he's warm and he's friendly, keeping unshaven. But then what he did was he then went and had a shave, shoved some glasses on, and now he's a teacher. You've just gone up to the school to talk to the teacher about how little Johnny's getting on at school. Completely different feel to it. Or you now go back to the stern kind of look. Perhaps you're overdrawn at the bank. Or perhaps you've been caught smoking behind the bike sheds. Right? So you can see that each of these different photos is giving a different mood and feel. Even though they're all black and white, even though they're all lit from the same way, the expression, the body language, the amount the person is shaved, the little bit of collar you can see, is all giving an impression, a particular kind of impression. And we are manipulating, we are creating these different impressions such that it's back to this, what impression do you need to give? This is the bit that's running right through the whole thing with headshots. The headshots utterly are all about you are creating an impression in the viewer. What impression do you want to create in that viewer? And so we're manipulating everything else in order to put that across. Now, next thing I'll run across, where that time is running on. There's so much stuff about headshots here, but I'll try and kind of speed up a little bit here. Marcy says the glasses he had a Superman effect on that guy. Yeah, there is a little bit of that kind of cross between, you always think that Clark Kent and Superman. How can Superman just put on a pair of glasses and then suddenly everybody thinks he's Clark Kent? It never seems, and yet it does. The difference between, even myself. Okay, so we look at headshot here. If you've never seen me before, this creates one impression. Set of glasses softens the face. You wouldn't hit a guy with glasses now, would you? The glasses soften the face. If I now put the glasses on the end of the nose and look over the top of them, then that creates a different impression again. Now this is going to, a little bit more, so from there, glasses possibly add up to 10 IQ points. These at the, end of the nose possibly adds an extra 10 again. Right? So I look much more, possibly intellectual, glasses on the end of the nose, whereas without the glasses and without any other reference points, I might look less approachable, less friendly, less intellectual, whatever, so glasses are a good way of softening. And then, of course, there are 1,000 different style of glasses, each of which are going to have their own effects as well. Marie says, this is great, Kim. You've given me a lot of info showing the different expressions. Excellent. Good. I'm really glad this is working. So next thing I want to show you then is the idea of sometimes with portraits, if you're doing a set of portraits, that there's the set, I've just shown you sets of portraits of one person, but sometimes what you do is you do a set of portraits of like a cast or staff portraits or something like that, where what you do with that is you have different people, but you use exactly the same lighting and expression and certainly crop and everything else. So for those who may have long memories and remember something I did about 3 or 4 years ago, I talked about a photo shoot I did for a theatre group called Bippity, and they were doing live street theatre. And in between their little performances, we went back to this room that they had, and they would touch up their makeup and have a little bit of rest, drink, eat some biscuits before going out and doing the next performance. And I suddenly noticed there was a nice little spot where there was a window light here and a window light there, and actually it was a bit of blank wall. And so I just took some quick headshots. And so this one of Andre was, so at this point he's come back in, he's not reapplied the makeup yet. You can see it's all a bit rough around the edges. It needs a little bit of touching up. Then we get Annalise. And so what I've done is I've taken them under exactly the same lighting conditions. Then we've got Kimberly, and we've got Ryan, and then we've got Stephen. And what we then end up with is this set of 5 headshots, which are all related by the fact that they all straight onto the camera. They're all leaning into the lens fractionally. They've all got their makeup on. They're all lit in the same way. So that's allowing a coherence. That's allowing to create a set. And they all feel related to each other. So if you were to have the poster and then you were to have, with the main picture, and then you were to have these 5 little headshots underneath, they would all feel part of the kind of coherent whole as such. Now, what next to do? Yeah, I think I'm going to skip past a couple here because otherwise I'm never going to. Sorry, where are we? This is what I was going to go for next. Sorry. Yes. So this one, as an example, here's another thing whereby we've got a headshot. So this is Mark, my friend Mark, and so he's a writer and poet, and he'd written a book called The Odd Sock Exchange, which was full of poems, but particularly about this idea of an odd sock exchange. So the idea was, one of the poems is that there's this place you can go to and hand in your odd sock, or go and look for another odd sock to go with your missing odd sock. And it was a fun thing, but he had this whole book for it, and he needed a promotional picture to go for it, the author's photo. And so here, what we've done here is we're going for a fun idea. Here you've got somebody who's looking dead serious. He's taken on board this complete idea. He's projecting this, I am a serious author and look at me. And he's got, there's no attempt at the warm smile. He's absolutely eyeballing you. He's owning this space. It's all a strong photo. And then he's got this stripy sock sitting on his shoulder, which kind of undermines the whole idea of this, and it's going for that juxtaposition. It's going for that contradiction of the serious face with the very unserious sock hanging over his shoulder, which is what makes this photo. So we're using the notion of the headshot, and at the same time, kind of, there's a word and I've forgotten what it is, but sort of undermining it somewhat. What have we got here? Anton says that's not where you wear your sock, or how you wear your sock. Now, other things to bear in mind. Let me show you a couple of different ways photographing the same person. So this shot here is a singer, Robyn Stapleton. Now this was the shot we created for her album cover. So Robyn, incredible singer, Scottish singer. She sings traditional Scottish songs and what have you. And she had her first album called Fickle Fortune. And what we did was we created this photo to look like the kind of thing a lover would have painted in his locket. There's a timeless quality to it. We've done it to create it to look very, very painterly. And then that's enhanced by the fact that I've then added this kind of paint texture in the background. But the fact that she doesn't have a collar, there isn't a dress coming up, it's just bare shouldered, is adding to that timeless notion that if this was a painting, this could be a painting across quite a large sort of sense of time. It becomes fairly timeless. And then she's got this little kind of Celtic knot necklace, and we kept everything simple. So it's about the face, her beautiful red hair, those piercing blue eyes. And so this headshot, and then this was cropped square for her album cover. But this shot then is designed as this notion of, if you're getting this, she sings traditional Scottish songs, okay, with this kind of timeless quality to it. She's not a up-to-the-date Taylor Swift. She's not a specific kind of Motown or 70s funk or 50s bebop or anything like that. So you know from the album cover that if you're into traditional Scottish music, you're much more likely to get it from this. Okay. Now, after we'd done this shot, we were walking down the road, and I took this shot of her. Totally and utterly different kind of shot. Also a headshot, also kind of slightly rule of thirds, but this is outdoors. We've got the setting sun. Okay, the sun's just setting. We've got the Galloway Hills landscape in the background. It's cold, it's windy. You can sort of see the nose is starting to turn a little bit red with the coldness. Also, but the red hair, it's so same woman, both headshots, utterly different mood and feel. Okay, so never think that a headshot is just a headshot, that there are so many different ways you can do a headshot and you can be really creative about it. But with all these things, it's what narrative are you trying to tell? And this narrative is a very, very different narrative to this one. Okay, what else have we got? John says, beautiful singer, portrait headshot. Sandra says, I like the portrait of the singer. Marcy says, definitely the wide headshots look better. VG says, wow, her eyes, hair, quite fetching and a great shot. Okay, now this notion though, well, I'm just going to move on to kind of the last section here, which is about this idea of background, because so far pretty much everything we've done hasn't really involved a background, apart from sort of somebody, like I think it was a bit with Alex with a window behind him, and what difference it makes. So like with here, it's not, you could have that there, but if she had an urban background behind, if this was Chicago street, it would have a different kind of feel to it. So when I've talked before very much about this notion of when you're creating a picture, once you get that narrative, remember we're talking about what is it you're trying to convey. Once you understand what it is you're trying to convey, everything else in that photo is either contributing to or detracting from the narrative you want to put across. And so you have to be thinking very carefully, what else is in this picture and is it contributing to the narrative I want to tell? Now, in the case of this one, what we've got now is Scottish woman in a Scottish landscape on a cold Scottish winter's day. Okay, so that's contributing to this particular narrative. Let's take a look at this one. So this one of Frances. Now she is a ceramicist, and I did a whole set of photos for her. And part of this headshot then is it's got part of her workshop in the background. It's got all these jars of different dyes and chemicals and powders and bits and pieces that are going in. This is an artist's work, artists, creators, makers. This is a maker's workshop, and it's a maker's headshot. Okay, and that's again reflected in the idea that she's not wearing a smart blouse or a suit or even just a sort of straightforward t-shirt. Over the t-shirt is an apron. Okay, so the notion of the apron that's coming into the shot and the out of focus workshop kind of background here is a really strong part of the narrative we're telling. Another shot here of Ed Pook, who's a chef. Okay, so he used to run Pook's restaurant a couple of doors down from here, sadly closed. But when I did a whole shoot for him, and I think possibly back in the early days, we go back about 5 years worth of podcasts, you may well find a podcast that's where I talk about the shoot I did with him. But with this one, we're going for the chef in his restaurant. And the black and white then is, again, creating this notion of it's a creative art shot. Now, he is, straight up, we're not into tilted heads here. Part of the thing about Ed's restaurant was he was the owner, he owned this space, this was his way of cooking, this was his ingredients, this was his aesthetic, and you kind of went to his restaurant on his terms. This wasn't like going to some kind of burger joint or some kind of does everything kind of food. This was very specific cuisine, that he had a menu which was updated. What was on the menu on any one day depended entirely on the ingredients he had sourced, and most of those ingredients would be local. Okay, so they were seasonal. He had the connections with the people who hunted particular animals or fished particular animals or had been out and gathering particular herbs, spices, herbs and fragrances, and so everything was seasonal, everything. And as such, there was the whole aesthetic was about the way you went into his space. This wasn't just come along to, TGI Fridays or something like that, where, they're making the effort for you as to come in as a consumer, that everybody can find something they want. It may well turn out you don't like anything on his menu that night, in which case, tough. So that notion of him owning this space, looking straight forward, his arms are slightly folded, but at the same time we've got, there's the hint of the bar, the bottles in the background. We've got the plates on the counter here. We've got this side light. We've got this, so everything is designed here for completely, that particular kind of shot. Now compare that to, say, this one of Narelle. And Narelle is a violin maker, or actually not just violins, all sorts of wooden strings. She makes cellos and violas. So if it's got guitars as well. So if it's made of wood and it's got strings, she makes them. And when we did this shot, here now what we're getting a shot of her in her workshop. And behind her then we can see bits of violin backs and what have you that are still being made. We can see the bits of wood up on the top here. We can see here the edge of, there's a line here which shows that this piece of wood is going to be cut out soon. And then we've got wood shavings at the bottom where the plane has moved across. So, and then she's leaning on this, and again, but here we do have a slight tilt of the head. Yes, she's not doing the really warm friendly. There's a confidence in owning the space, but there's also a little bit of approachability in there as well, which is an important part of it. And then if we want to take that approachability completely across, here we have a picture of Serena. And Serena with, she was having one of these kind of, like a personal counsellor type of aspect to her business. And so this is literally come and sit down and have a cup of tea with me, and we're in her kitchen, and her kitchen is fading out at the back there. It looks like she's lit by window light. We have in fact got a big softbox just up here. But we've got tea in the pot. She's got her hand on the mug. She is smiling warmly at you. Okay. So, this is the ultimate friendly, warm, come and have a cup of tea kind of shot, which is, as far removed from edge shot as you can get. So the notion then that the background is making a key part of this narrative is really important to understand. A lot of headshots are deliberately shot against a neutral background, that just straight black, straight white, so that it isn't interfering with, so that all the attention gets drawn to the face and the expression. And most of the ones that you've seen today have had a neutral background. But that's why I wanted to put in the fact that you can also add a lot to the narrative by where you take the shot. Are you taking the shot in an office? Are you taking it in a kitchen? Are you taking it in a restaurant or a cafe? Are you taking it on the street? Are you taking it in the hills? The headshot that I did earlier this week for this woman who's starting a life coaching course, we were originally going to do the shot in a house in the dining room, but we got the one sunny day that we've been waiting for months, coincidentally. So we went up into the hills and did a lovely shot outdoors with the Galloway Hills in the background. So that background is adding to the narrative. What else have we got here? Marcy says, she was just saying, I'm friendly, just don't tell me how to build a guitar. Yeah, that would be the picture of Narelle. Marcy says, also says, headshots for comedians are the hardest, as they want to look as pro as possible while still retaining, and I've been asked to do this, a wacky quality. That's when I hand them the clown mask. Yeah, comedians, there is a thing with comedians. You're coming across as professional, but at the same time, a bit quirky, a bit wild, a bit wacky. And that's where we go back to like some of the shots earlier where somebody's pulling their hair or they're doing some wild gesture or something like that. But then part of that, you're doing the lighting. What you do is, okay, good point then, Marcy. Just a slight little tangent. In essence, you have to create a professional lighting setup. So it doesn't look like it's been taken on a phone. You have to have a sense of, it looks like it's been taken in a studio with lighting. And that in itself just sends out the signals that says professional environment, or you're taking it on, with it like on a stage. Maybe you've got some light setup or whatever, but it's clearly a stage background. And this is so the setting itself, and then the clothes that they're wearing, everything of that needs to say professional. And if everything else around it, the clothing, the lighting, the setting are all saying professional, then the comedian can be as wild and wacky, pulling their hair, not really enough hair here, sticking their nose, doing gestures, pulling a face, sticking their tongue out, whatever it is they want to do. And then that's how you kind of get the wacky but professional as well. So you're looking for the bits that are professional, which you can then hang the wacky on as such. If you do wacky, but the rest of it doesn't look professional, then it just kind of looks a little bit amateur. So hope that kind of helps a little bit with that. Okay, and one last shot I'm just going to do for the new members won't know anything of this, but for the first 3 years or so of these podcasts, we used to have Pat. Pat came along. Pat was actually in her 90s. She was in her late 70s, I think, when I first met her. Pat was an amazing woman, and she used to, even though she had no real interest in photography, she used to turn up to these podcasts every single week because she just enjoyed the company, and she was a lovely woman. But Pat had actually been a model when she was a young woman, and then, I don't know, 15 years ago or something, I was down in her area, and I went. We actually did a photographic session. We had a bit of fun, and Pat dressed up, and she decided she wanted to have a photo of herself looking a bit like Marlene Dietrich. So it gave me a chance to sort of look at Hollywood style lighting, and we did this shot in the end. So for anybody who remembers Pat, this is one of my favourite shots I ever did of Pat. And she was just wonderful. She went off and she got this clothing, and we pulled out photos, and there's a classic shot of Marlene Dietrich where, now obviously Pat doesn't look like Marlene Dietrich, but she just wanted to have that same tilt, expression, body language, cigarette kind of hanging out of her fingers. In fact, I think at the time actually she used a pen, and then I photoshopped in the cigarette afterwards. And then I've lit it and I've edited it to give it that kind of soft little glow bit, and the little kind of the way the light is, glowing in the eyes, little catch lights. Catch lights, that's the word I was looking for earlier, the catch lights. So that's a little bit of fun as well. So all in all then, that's kind of what you're talking about with headshots. What have we got here? Anton says, wonderful shot, very 30s. Sandra says, great black and white shot. Marcy says, great photo. And she took inspiration. Well done. Susan says, yes, I remember Pat's photo. Fabulous. So that then is hopefully then is a good sense of what headshots are about. So primarily then, to kind of sum up, what we're talking about with a headshot is that a headshot, for the most part, tends to be head and shoulders. You have a limited amount of real estate to play with head and shoulders, so you've got to make every single pixel count. So the clothes the person is wearing, the background that they have, whether it's a neutral background or it's a background of something that's out of focus, the colour, whether it's light, whether it's dark, how you do the lighting, then the body language, the expression, are they leaning forward, are they leaning back, are they side on, are they front on? Is the head tilted forward? Is the head tilted back? Is their expression one of warmth? Is their expression one of ownership? Is their expression one of wild and wacky? So all these different things come together, but it's about the purpose, the impression. What impression does this person that you're photographing need to give the viewer? Okay. And that's where your starting point is. You need to have that conversation when you're doing a headshot. Who is it they're aiming at? Who's going to be looking at this photo? What impression does the person who's looking at this photo need to give? And whether that's a comedian needing a picture for their poster to advertise their event, whether it's a professional needing a headshot for LinkedIn or their website, whether it's an actor sending off something for a headshot to a potential casting director who's looking for somebody that's reliable and professional. There's all these, or even for your dating profile. What are you going to send out? All these things need to come into consideration. And then once you understand that point of communication, everything follows that. The background, the expression, the body language, the lighting, the camera settings, the amount of, depth of field that you want to use. So hopefully then all this kind of helps come across. So with all this in mind, and because this is the topic of the month that John chose, we're going to have a headshot challenge. Yay! Which has immediately freaked out 90% of you, I'm sure. So, but this is a longer month, so you've got 3 weeks. Okay, so on the 29th of March, we're going to have the headshot challenge. So, maybe one or two of you might have one that you can kind of take out of the, your archives. Or maybe this is an opportunity for you to go and grab someone, okay? Maybe you've got somebody who needs a headshot, and now you're loaded up with information that you can go and try out. Or maybe you can grab one of your grandchildren, or you can grab your sister, or you can grab somebody else. But if you're going to approach this headshot, try and think about it in terms of, well, what impression, what would this headshot be used for? Would it be used for a LinkedIn profile, or would it be used for a dating profile? Or would it be used to advertise your upcoming one-man show or one-woman show at the theatre, right? So I will allow to a degree something that's maybe a little bit more portraiture in a wider sense with that. But what we are looking at, though, is a head and shoulders, or maybe waist upwards, but it's not full body shots. It's not somebody in the distance surrounded by a scene. It is about the close in, and it's about the engaged. Okay, the engaged, the eyes are looking at the camera. Okay, so yeah, some people are going to freak out at that, but this is a chance to really give it a go. Okay, so that will be for March the 29th. Make sure you get your image to me by Friday, March the 27th. Saturday morning, the 28th, at the absolute earliest. So the absolute latest, rather. Any time before that is good. The further in advance you can get it to me, the easier it is for me to construct the show. Now, other things coming up this month. Probably what I should also do at this point is bring up all this lot. So that if you are sending me images, send them to kimayrespodcast@gmail.com. Okay? I mean, you can, those of you who know my other email addresses, you can send them to me there. It's just my mailbox fills up somewhat. So I set up this one specifically for these podcasts. So kimayrespodcast@gmail.com is the best place to send your image. And while we're here, if you're finding these podcasts useful, interesting, entertaining, if you feel you've got something out of this and you would like to contribute, then buymeacoffee.com/Kim Ayres is one of the places you can do this. Another place you could, if you can send me the image, or you can stick it in the Facebook group. If you're on Facebook, you can stick it in there as well. But tell me a little bit about it. Tell me what the headshot is for. Tell me maybe whether it's about the person, where it would be placed. Give a little bit of story behind it. Don't just send a picture of a head. Tell me the story of why you took it. And maybe any interesting little anecdotes that went along with it. Any particular obstacles you had to overcome. That kind of thing would be fun. Now, other points this month then. So next week I am going to, I've had a bit of a think about it. I'm going to show you some photos I've done of a woodsman/artist/furniture maker called Phil Crenell, who turned 80 last year. He's got a wonderful several acres of woodland, about 7 or 8 miles from here. And he makes furniture, but he's also a painter. And I went out and I spent the day with him in one of these kind of embedded photography type situations, where I got to move around and just photograph him at work, photograph the place that he worked in. And so I've got a whole bunch of photos. So I'm going to show some of those next week and talk about that. The week after, so in 2 weeks' time, we will be looking on the 22nd, we'll be having another feedback session. Okay. So if anybody would like feedback on that photography, like we did last week, send me your images. Again, kimayrespodcast@gmail.com is the place to send them. So send me your images for feedback. Tell me what your sticking point is, and I will do my best to help you move forward with that photo. And then, like I say, in 3 weeks, we will be having the headshot challenge. So I think that kind of pretty much, what have we got here? Anton said, John says, great podcast. Excellent presentation. Glad you liked it, John, especially as this was your idea. Lisa says, very helpful, thank you. Zach Martinez says, hi, Zach, glad you could make it along. Says, my Sunpack external flash with my R6 II good enough for night event photography? Is it? For night photography, I honestly have absolutely no idea. It depends on the kind of night photography you're doing, where you're going to use it, where you're going to place it. Any flash can be used in the right place under the right set of circumstances. It's a bit of a kind of a random comment for this particular podcast, but Zach, if you want to go and check out some of the previous things that I've done on low light. In fact, there was a podcast just a few weeks ago. You don't have to scroll very far back in the playlist to find low light photography. But if you have a specific question or a specific photo that you'd like to put in and to talk around it, then yeah, like I say, KimAyresPodcast at gmail.com. Send me a photo, send me what you were trying to do, tell me where your problems were, and I can give you some feedback. Certainly if you can do that before 2 weeks' time, then we can include that in the podcast on the 22nd. Anton says, Anton's saying that the R6 Mark II is probably good enough for night photography as long as you have a look for the good light sources. And a flash of any kind you're set. Well, as long, yes, if you know how to use it and you put it in the right place, then there's plenty of opportunity. Right. Okay. Is that us? I think that's us. Thank you to John for coming up with the idea. Thank you to everybody who's been writing and giving feedback and commenting and all the rest of it, because it's this that really enriches this podcast. I can stand here and chat away, but it's the feedback, it's the bits and pieces and the tangents we go off on when you ask questions that really allow us to get a much better understanding of the project, of the topic. So, right, okay, I think I need to click that. Thank you so much for turning up. Next week, then, I'll talk about woodsman and artist and furniture maker Phil Crenell. The week after that, feedback podcast, get your images sent in. And the clocks will be going forward here in the UK in 3 weeks' time. The time will have shifted. Always check your local time before tuning in over the next few weeks. Look forward to seeing you all then. Take care. Bye-bye.